and welcome to If She Knew. This is a podcast where we talk about mental health, vulnerability, and real-life experiences. Before we get started, go ahead and follow for weekly episodes, as well as you can follow along on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube under Tierney's Journey, which is Tierneys Journey. You may have noticed that we are in costumes today. That is because we're dressed as Glinda and Elphaba for Wicked, because it's coming out soon, and we also just love a good excuse to get dressed up in costumes. I have my lovely mother-in-law here today, and she's going to talk about her experience with perimenopause and symptoms, relationships, day-to-day life, all that good stuff. But before we get into that, if you are a man or a younger person and you're like, what does this have to do with me? Pay attention, because you will either one, experience this at some point in your life, or two, you know a woman who is experiencing this, and whether that's your mom, your aunt, your family friend, and this will help you to better understand what's happening and why they're acting the way that they are. So we're going to get into it. So to start, perimenopause can last for a few years, and a lot of people don't know that there's a thing called perimenopause. They just know about menopause. So to start, for people who don't know, what is perimenopause?
So perimenopause is basically when your ovaries stop working. It's a gradual decrease of a hormone in your body called estrogen. And it has a really profound impact on a lot of your physio and mental state. It starts around age 45, can go about 10 years. Some women start it as early as in their 30s. I don't think I had that then. 47. Hate admitting that, but you have to at some point. And basically, it's just the fluctuation of the estrogen that just is what characterizes. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. Why it's perimenopause, because you're still technically menstruating. But it changes that too. So they can either be closer together or farther apart. It's the time before the period totally goes away.
Yeah, and just to be clear, menopause is when you haven't had a period for 12 whole months. That's menopause. So this is what she was saying, is you still kind of get your period every now and then. So when you first started experiencing symptoms that were affecting your mental health, were you able to recognize right away, like, oh, this is related to perimenopause, or like my hormones, or were you like, what is going on?
So I think I did start at 45, but I didn't know I started at 45. I think it correlated with a time in my life where there was a lot of changes to begin with. So obviously we had our children very young. And so at the same time I started, I think, going through this, both my children were in the process of, getting married, getting a house, moving away. So I was experiencing like all that kind of life change trauma. And then on top of that, a job that, because for the first time in my life I ever had a job where I felt really successful and really felt like I knew what I was doing, and I felt very empowered. That job got sold and closed, and then I had to take about 10 steps back in my career. That all happened too. So I experienced, obviously, the physical symptoms at that time. I mean, my periods they're still like this. They got really close together. So for about 2 years now, I've had my period every 3 weeks. Minus this one. This one's actually holding on longer, so fingers crossed. But no, I mean, I think that because, like I said, I had all this personal life change, I didn't realize the impact that this physical change was also having on my mental health at the time.
Yeah, and from what I was reading and like other people's experiences, that seems to be like a common thing, that a lot of people think that it's just stress from other parts of their life, like work or relationships or their kids moving out, or sometimes their kids are still going through their teenage years, so it can be hard to identify. So let's talk about what were some of like the specific symptoms that you noticed in regards to your mental health.
So, like I said, mental health, obviously, well, first off, when I was very young, like 11, I did go to a therapist. I had a little bit of a rough childhood. I did have, my siblings were significantly older, so I had spent a lot of time, and this is not a jab on my parents did a great job, but just life for them as well. My siblings are much older. They moved out when I was very young. I had nieces and nephews very young. I was, constantly babysitting and caring for small children from a very young age. And then all of like the pressures of doing well in school. And then, like I said, I was kind of bullied at school because I was overweight. So I had all of these things. So I had generalized anxiety disorder from a very young age. And what happened then is, I think for a long time, like I knew how to control it. I learned through physical activity. If I exercised a lot and I kept my endorphins high, I could keep it under control. And I probably did that for at least 20 years. But what I noticed with this round of depression and this round of anxiety is there's no amount of exercise that controls this. I'm talking 31 miles of running for 8 hours does not control this. So I think what I really started to notice was just the severe anxiety, the record player in my head, just the voices of, not being able to tell what was a real fear or what was like logical fear versus what was just not logical, I would say the best way. And then just like I said, there's just the crying, the like intense crying like where I would break out in sweats, and just like this, it just hits you out of nowhere. And it's hard because when you're at work and you're a woman and you're in some kind of corporate leadership, this is not good. Because this comes out of nowhere. Like I can be sitting at my desk and have a random irrational thought, and then I'm bawling my eyes out and I don't know why. Or just coming home and just like not having the will to just exist the rest of the day and just crawling into bed and just sitting there waiting for it to get dark and waiting to go to sleep. And you have things like loss of appetite, and you have like, it varies with everybody. Some people have like gaining of appetite and they gain weight and stuff like that. But for me, my anxiety can trigger not wanting to eat. So.
And that's something too that is like, if you already have a previous mental health condition like anxiety, depression you've had earlier in your life, you're more likely to experience mood swings during perimenopause. And actually, I found a quote that said 4 in 10 women will experience mood swings, irritability, low energy, sadness, or difficulty concentrating, which is a lot of women.
Well, so difficulty concentrating, also super hard in a workplace. I manage a group of people where the centralized customer experience group. So basically our team is all other duties as assigned. So all day long, no matter what I have to do, whether it's, the tracking of the KPIs or working on processes, so I can be really deep and intent and thought in a process that's very hard to think about. And then I will get, a Teams message, a call, an email asking me to think through a complicated process for my staff to help them with the customers. And then I'll sit there for 5-10 minutes after going, I have no idea what I was doing prior to this. And it's crippling.
Yeah, and also we were talking about like perimenopausal mood instability, which is basically like thinking about it as having PMS symptoms that aren't related to like, they don't correlate with menstrual cycles. So they're just sporadic. You have those symptoms throughout the whole month, randomly.
Yes. Like fits of rage that my husband can attest to.
How has your experience with perimenopause impacted your day-to-day life and relationships?
So for relationships with my spouse, there's lots of things. This is going to be really fun because we're going to talk about sex with my daughter-in-law. Woo! Yeah, I'm sorry. One of them is loss of libido.
Mm-hmm.
Which just the last thing on earth I want to do is be touched.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm married to a man whose love language is physical touch. And he wants to hug and touch and be hugged and be loved. And, you know, we're all fragile egos, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have, we want to feel like someone wants us or desires us and that we're attractive. I mean, that's just our innate who we are as beings. I mean, even like look at peacocks. I mean, it's in nature. Everybody wants to be attractive. And when you don't want to be touched and you don't want to touch, that can have a severe impact on your spouse and how they feel about themselves. So take sadness, depression, low libido all in,
Mm-hmm.
and then add guilt
Mm-hmm.
because now you made your spouse feel less than.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, estrogen is correlated to, it lubricates your vagina. So when you go through perimenopause, menopause, your estrogen levels are decreasing, which leads to vaginal dryness, which can cause sex to be painful, uncomfortable, less pleasurable. And if you're experiencing that, you aren't the only one, and it's a normal part of what you're going through. And it's not something to be ashamed about. And it's important for your spouses to understand that what you're experiencing is part of this process. It's part of your hormones. It doesn't mean you love them any less. And there are plenty of resources, medications, products you can use to help make that time more comfortable for you. So if you want to do a quick little Google search, you should be able to find some stuff. But
Yeah, we're not going to go that way here today. Sorry.
maybe another time.
Another time.
Do you feel like not enough people talk about their experience with perimenopause?
Oh, totally. I had no idea about any of this. As I said, my siblings are all older, and obviously my mother, and no one talked to me about this. The only reason I possibly started to have the correlation was TikTok and social media, where it started like stupid, I think little things like frozen shoulder syndrome. I was having a lot of problems now. I do have a shoulder injury, so there would be times where I'd flare up if I was doing push-ups or heavy lifting, but now it was like all the time. My shoulder hurt all the time, and I started just looking up videos of, you know, why does my shoulder hurt all the time, and then correlating that with some of the other physical symptoms that you go through. There's a lot of like joint pain as well, sometimes to like my hands and my knees and stuff like that. A lot of inflammation. Estrogen can help with things in your body like inflammation, or causing inflammation to be less. So you have all of these things that were like, oh, I'm feeling that, and I started getting looped into kind of the bad, and the good thing about TikTok is it'll take you down loops.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm old, I couldn't think of it. But down these rabbit holes of things that kind of match, I can't talk today. But down that rabbit hole of, oh, I have that symptom. Oh, I have that symptom. Oh my God, I have that symptom. And then it started to be like, oh wow, I'm that age.
Mm-hmm.
Like this makes sense. So I think once, I forget what your question was.
Do you feel like not enough people talk about it?
Oh, okay, yes, thank you. Then I started to know what it was, but no one had ever talked to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and from like what I've seen of a lot of people's experiences is a lot of times even doctors don't learn like super in depth about like perimenopause, menopause. So a lot of them kind of can push away your symptoms sometimes. So I also found another quote that said, while 60% of women with significant menopausal symptoms seek medical attention, nearly 3/4 of them are left untreated, which is crazy. And I think part of it is because people don't talk about it, people don't like to talk about it. But that is one of the good things about social media now is that people are talking about it so you can understand what's happening. And one of the tips that they say is to write down any symptoms that you're experiencing on a piece of paper, even if you don't know for sure if it's related to perimenopause. and bring that into your doctor, because nowadays a lot of doctors only have 10 minutes, 15 minutes to talk to you. So if you can give them a list, show them everything that's going on, and find a doctor that is actually cares about, taking care of your symptoms.
Women's health. Find a doctor that cares about women's health.
Yeah, because it is a normal part of aging, but there are things that you can do to help with symptoms. You don't have to just endure it for years. What resources have you used during this time?
So thankfully when I hit my breaking point, and I think Lewis hit his breaking point. It was all right, you need to talk to someone. You need to process all of these kind of irrational thoughts and feelings. And I say irrational, not they're not valid, but I'll be honest, they're not all real. So when I did that, we did find a therapist for me. So I started just having this weekly conversation with someone to say, these are my thoughts. Are they real? Are they not real? How do I process them? What are some tricks that could help me through a lot of things? I think that one of the reasons I couldn't tell that it was related for so long was like I said, the life change was such a loss of identity. I got married at 19. I was a mother by 20. So my whole identity was being a mom. So just having that, and like I said, when you guys were going to college and my career was good, it was okay, I had at least a little bit of something else to be. It was, it was my profession, it was my job, it was sales. So it gave me a little bit of a gap to fill in. I'm not a mom anymore, so who am I? And see, you're killing me.
It's okay.
But having someone to talk to about, having a way to find who you are again. So I needed someone to talk me through menopause doesn't define you, perimenopause doesn't define you, your job doesn't define you, your children don't define you. So having the skills that she had to give me to start piecing myself back together again is huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also just found this podcast the other day that I sent her. It's called Perimenopause WTF ? On Spotify, and they're basically all they talk about is menopause, perimenopause, and answer a lot of people's questions that they have about it. So if you need a resource or need more people to relate to, you can go ahead and listen to that podcast as well. But yeah, therapy is a good resource. It's very non-biased. You can talk about whatever you need to talk about, and they're not going to judge you for it. Therapy doesn't work for everybody, and that's okay. But you can always give it a try. There's a ton of different types of therapy. You can find support groups. You can start medications. You can do whatever you need to do to help your mental health. And they'll help to guide you in that. What would you want your younger self to know about perimenopause?
I think I would go back and tell myself a lot of things. One of the things is when I watched my mom and my sisters go through this time of life, I think I was very judgmental of them. And I think that I didn't realize. I didn't have the empathy I needed to understand their mental health and what they were going through at this stage of life. And I can look back on it and see changes in them that I know now was this change in their life. And I wish I would have been a better sibling or a better daughter, and just been a better support system for them. So I would do that first. And then it's going to be very important to me to tell my daughter-in-law and tell my daughter that, this stage of life is really hard and that it's okay to go through this. And then another thing I think I would tell myself for when just going through life is keep a piece of you. Don't let everybody take all of you, because when they go away, because they do, because that's normal and that's a stage of life, or one day, God forbid, you lose your spouse, if you give all of you away, when they're gone, there's nothing left.
And I think it's important also to quickly add in here too that this age range for women has a high risk of suicide at this time, because your mood and your hormones are fluctuating so much. So that's just something to be aware of at this time. And if you are starting to have those feelings, to make sure that you seek help or call someone, talk to someone, because unfortunately that is something that happens at this time. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really good too is it's not all bad. So there's a stigma, I think, in society where if you're in like your younger, more feminine phase of you're just starting your careers, or you're just starting to be a mom, and you feel like you have purpose, and obviously you're young and pretty, and you feel feminine and all those things. One of the things I also just experienced in my life was when I was 24, I was told I couldn't have any more kids. And I went through a phase at that point of life where I didn't feel feminine. So it impacted my self-esteem, because I didn't feel like I was a female because I couldn't bear more children. And then this circled back to that phase in my life again where it's like, I'm not going to have my period anymore. So that's going to make me old, and it's going to make me not feel very feminine or very pretty, and it's going to have a profound impact on your self-esteem. So I think that, unfortunately, generalized anxiety disorder, which is an underlying issue for me, can also make you terrified of what everybody thinks of you all the time. So obviously this compounded that in me. And so finding little stupid things to piece yourself back together, again, give yourself identity, but also have the courage to do things where everybody's going to tell you you're insane and crazy, but make you feel good about yourself, but make you feel pretty. Do it. Nobody gets out of this life alive. Nobody is perfect. Everybody's got a little bit of a freak flag, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't get to live it and you don't get to enjoy it just because you're so afraid of what everybody else thinks of you all the time, the only person you're actually hurting is yourself. So, allow yourself to just be whoever it is you are.
Life is too short to care about what other people think about you.
Yes.
And less fun.
Amen.
Less fun.
Less fun.
So this was just to help you understand or relate to someone if you're experiencing these things, and better understand the women in your life who are going through this, and kind of know how to better support them throughout this time and normalize talking about it, because I think it's beneficial to hear other people's experiences, because then you're like, okay, I'm not crazy, I'm not the only one going through it. So I hope that this was helpful for whoever's listening, and thanks for watching. Go ahead and follow, and give us a 5-star rating before you leave, and we will see you next week.
Yes, follow, do all the things, because she's amazing.
Aw. Bye.